I'm David Scandura.
I am Justus Burkett.
And today we're here to find out what are the best movies of 2023 on the greatest movie ever made.
Is that my tree?
What a disaster.
Jenny, all the stars are here.
It's true.
Welcome to the greatest movie ever made, the show where we watch a movie and tell you if it's the greatest movie ever made.
Woo!
But we're not doing that today.
No, we're not.
So I don't have to say the full intro.
No, we flipped the format on you. Fuck you.
I'm David Scandura, and I'm joined as always by my co-host and large bald New Year's baby.
That's right.
Justus Burkett.
I'm in cozy mode right now.
You look so incredibly cozy.
I'm comfy as fuck.
For those at home who this is an audio format, so you don't know what's happening in the podcast studio right now. My man has a beer, has the biggest robe I've ever seen, slippers, and he's just relaxing in the chair.
I'm gonna take a selfie of this so that we can post it on social so people know.
Just the chillest Emperor Palpatine I've ever seen in my life.
I'm comfy maxing. It is the week between Christmas and New Year's in recording time. This will obviously drop in 2024. But yeah, we're in that. I heard someone call it Void Week, which I had never heard that before. But the week between Christmas and New Year's is just kind of like a black pit of it's just a time suck. You just eat cheese and candy and lay on your parents' sofa. Like that's just the regular activities during this time of year. And so I was like, during this time of year, I need to embrace comfy maxing. I am cozy pilled. I'm never taking this robe off.
Yeah, I had the week off before Christmas, and that was my void week.
Yeah.
So now that we're post-Christmas, not that I'm really interested in doing anything like substantial or doing work or anything like that, but I have a little bit more energy than your average post-Christmas American right now.
Yes.
How have you been feeling mentally during this void week?
That is an interesting question. It has been kind of a mixed bag, Like I feel like holidays were good. I enjoyed those. I have been enjoying just getting to kind of spend some time at home and chill. I am also like preemptively very anxious for how much work I have to fucking do when I fully return. And I've been doing a bunch of like, because I'm anxious about getting work done, but I don't actually want to do work in the week between Christmas and New Year's. Instead, I've been like very diligently like trying to be like, okay, how am I going to be productive the first week of January? So I've been doing shit like changing like my screen time permissions on my phone, and like silencing notifications from all my social media apps, and like doing a bunch of like proactive shit to be like, I'm gonna limit distractions, and then just not doing the work this week. Instead, like not using this time to get ahead, just using this time to be like, I'm gonna be so fucking productive in 2024, but that's for a later time. So there's some like anxiety that is like associated with this week, but mostly it's been good. I'm a mixed bag, but I'm leaning positive. How about you? How are you feeling?
I am mixed bag, but leaning positive as well. Feeling a little bit more productive this week than during my void week before Christmas, but not by much. I did use some of this time to go to the theater and catch up on a few movies that I hadn't seen yet to see if I could round out my list. That was nice. But still mostly just relaxing at home, hanging out with the cats. My dad helped me put up Christmas lights before Christmas, which was really nice because I have a small Christmas tree, but I've never brought it out since I've had the cats because I just assume that they're gonna destroy it. So normally my house is not very festive around the holidays, and I have to go to my parents' house for the festivities. But my dad offered to come over and put up some Christmas lights, so we did that, and it's really nice. I really like it. I have them on every night.
Hell yeah. Shout out Papa Scandura.
Yeah. And you had a good time with the fam over the holidays as well. Had a great Christmas Eve with you and the Podmaster. So, feeling good. Feeling good. Feeling a lot better than I was earlier this month. And, still a mixed bag because that's just kind of my life sometimes.
Yeah.
But
I think that's just life as an adult.
Yeah.
Remember just being just like only happy? I feel
Yeah.
like that's like a kid thing.
Yeah, that was wow. That was before the towers fell.
Yes, pre 9/11 world. Nothing bad happened before 9/11.
Yeah. So looking forward to the new year. We'll see how. We'll see if I'm. I have a few things that I want to change and a few minor resolutions. We'll see if come Monday I'm like ready to go or if I'm not.
Initially you said resolutions and then you were gonna say come Monday, but all you said was come, and I was like, is there a come related resolution that David is making? My resolution is to come more.
I feel like there's two options with the come resolution. It's either come more or come less.
Yeah.
Or if you're David Carradine, come, but also
die.
Slightly hang myself, trying without dying.
Yeah. No cum related resolutions though.
No,
I don't have any cum related resolutions either. My one,
none that I'll express on this podcast.
yeah, my one potential resolution, like I haven't like actually made New Year's resolutions. I generally don't. But my one loose one is like I could probably drink a little bit less. So we'll see if I like end up doing a dry January or maybe just like just dialing it back a little bit.
My parents got me a pack of candy cigarettes for Christmas because normally they get me like my stocking is full of just candy and snacks and just small things because I'm not a kid anymore and I don't need lavish Star Wars action figure sets or anything like that. So they'll do that, and then they'll do normally like one big thing. So they got me a pack of candy cigarettes, which I don't think I've ever had. I don't even know if you could still make those.
Yeah.
But I had those this week.
Were they just saving those since 1995?
That's what I thought. I was like, how old are these? I think they picked them up on a trip they had recently. But I was having those, and I'm like, this is kind of. What if I started smoking?
Is your New Year's resolution to start smoking?
Maybe. These are kind of sick.
That is like a David Carradine-esque New Year's resolution that will just fucking kill you.
I'm just gonna... This year I resolved to just get worse in every way possible.
I resolve to start smoking. I resolve to get addicted to nicotine.
I'm gonna smoke more. I'm gonna drink more. I'm gonna fuck more.
Yeah. Gonna eat a lot more red meat. I'm just gonna see how many ways I can cause my arteries to tighten and clog. Yeah. So David, why don't you explain the format of today's episode for our dear listeners?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about 2023. We're going to talk about our favorite movies of the year. Before we get there, we had a few like categories in mind and a general discussion of the year. So let's start with 2023 as a whole.
Yes.
Let me just get out here and say, what a weird fucking year for movies.
Yeah. When we say we're talking about the year 2023, we're specifically talking about films released in 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just in general. Yeah, weird year for movies. Where do you want to start with this?
There's so many places we could start. I think overall, just like what do you feel about the type of movies that you saw this year, the movies that were coming out? How are you feeling as far as how this year shaped up for Hollywood as a whole? And does it give you hope for the future? I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's a fair jumping off point. I have two big thoughts about the year 2023 in film, which is one, good year for movies. Lots of good movies this year.
In terms of quality.
Yes.
Okay.
In terms of quality, good year for movies. Lots of good things being released this year. That and the reception of a lot of the good things that were released this year, like the commercial success of a lot of the good movies this year, was surprising and positive, right? Where it's like, oh, like a lot of good movies made a lot of money. A great example of that to me is Oppenheimer, right? A movie that I loved. And we'll probably talk more Oppie later. But a movie that I loved, a movie I thought was great. Chris Nolan's best IMO. And it made a shit ton of money. And I'm like, that rules. That like a biopic about J. Robert Oppenheimer, directed by like one of the biggest blockbuster directors that there is, fucking collected so much at the box office.
Yeah, I just watched a video today, and it said like it made almost $1 billion.
Yeah,
which is not. I think domestically. Before we get any farther, we're not box office experts.
No.
But
if you want that, go listen to the Blank Check podcast, Blank Check with Griffin and David. Griffin Newman is a box office freak, and you can listen to him do his thing.
Yeah, I can also recommend Dan Murrell on YouTube has a show every week where he breaks down the box office, and that's kind of where I got a lot of my perspective on the box office this year from him. This is the first year that I was actually interested in paying attention to this stuff, so check him out as well. But yeah, Oppenheimer made almost $1 billion. It's one of the highest grossing films of the year. And it's a 3-hour biopic about the man who created the atomic bomb. And it's nuts.
Yeah, and not an action movie, not a war movie. It's like a quiet, contemplative character study of a biopic, you know? And it's thematically like very heady and cerebral, right? There's a lot that movie wants you to think about a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how cool that a movie like that just made a shit ton of money. Like that makes me very happy, right? And there's I think a couple examples this year of movies that were kind of weird, sort of like weird like throw shit at a wall and see what sticks type of movies that ended up like making a decent amount of money, and I think that's cool.
Well, and we should probably just cross Barbenheimer off the list, just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
Barbie as well, which was more successful than Oppenheimer. I think it's like the biggest hit for Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Which
second biggest movie of the year behind the Super Mario movie, right?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And you know, the Barbenheimer memes, were they overdone? Yes. Did we all kind of get sick of them by the end? Sure.
I was sick of them as soon as they started.
Yeah.
You know this about me. I was immediately anti-Barbenheimer. I was like, fuck this shit.
But
I understand. Pink thing is next to grayscale.
Yeah.
thing.
And then of course, like everyone was trying to do Saw Patrol, and
now
they're gonna try to just recreate that lightning in a bottle again, and it's not gonna happen.
Studios are gonna try and force it, and everyone's gonna be like, "No, fuck you."
Because I think the reason why Barbenheimer was so successful was because of word of mouth. Was like this campaign that whoever started it on the internet, and it spread to this idea of, no, we're gonna actually support both of these movies.
Yeah.
These are both movies that we're interested in seeing.
Right.
And rather than, I think so often among pop culture discourse, places like Twitter, it's about who won that weekend, what movie beat the other movie.
Right.
And while Barbie was more successful that opening weekend, no doubt, it has a broader appeal and everything, it was really about supporting both of these movies.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
Again, in an age where pop culture discourse is so focused on dividing people.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I think that was the good thing about the Barbenheimer phenomenon, is basically it was the internet, right? The collective meme brain of the internet just being like, hey, like Greta Gerwig is doing like a weird comedy, heady comedy, right? And Chris Nolan's doing this like massive biopic, and like we're excited for both of these things, even though they like couldn't be more different, you know. Both movies I enjoyed.
Yeah,
I liked both of those movies. I loved Oppenheimer. I liked Barbie, but you know, both great movies, and I'm glad both of them got made, and I'm glad both of them made a shit ton of money.
And it's also great that like Greta Gerwig as a female director had such a successful hit.
Yeah.
And I'm worried that, I mean, they already are doing this. They're learning the wrong lessons from Barbie. Because Hasbro's like, fucking Magic 8 Ball movie. Actually, if they make Magic 8 Ball movie a horror movie, yeah. But now they're just like, we're gonna throw out a bunch of we're gonna make more toy movies because
Right.
they want toy movies. It's like, no.
Did you learn nothing from Battleship, Hasbro?
Yeah. God. Or the Transformers movie that came out this year didn't do particularly well either.
Right. Which actually, that's maybe a good transition point for us to talk about some more of 2023 in film. Which is the Transformers movie that came out this year didn't do particularly well. That has been something of a trend this year. A lot of box office behemoth properties have been struggling in 2023.
You know who's had a really bad year?
Disney, baby.
Yep.
What, the Mickey Mouse is not doing great.
And I could not be happier.
We're a little happy about it. Yeah. Listeners to this podcast, like just to be clear, David and I don't have any ill will against anyone who works on movies that are produced by Disney or one of their subsidiary companies, right? We have nothing against filmmakers and the people, behind the camera, on the set, and even on screen of movies produced by, 20th Century Fox, Disney, Marvel Studios, Lucasfilm. We don't have any animosity towards them.
There are a lot of people who worked very hard this year.
Yes.
That were not reasonably compensated, which
Yes.
we will talk about, I'm sure, when we get to the strikes.
Yeah.
We do not bear them any ill will. However, Bob Iger, if you're listening to this podcast,
how's Wish working out for you?
Yeah,
bitch.
Bob Iger's got more money than God, so
Yeah.
it's not really going to matter. But it was stunning to hit the summer.
Yeah.
And realize that the flops were not going to stop.
Yeah.
The most successful movie that Disney had this year was Guardians of the Galaxy 3, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
This I can attribute to Dan Murrell. He did a video basically dissecting the whole Disney kerfuffle this year, the Disney's terrible year. The money that Disney made off of Avengers Endgame, Avatar: The Way of Water, and Spider-Man No Way Home, which are the three most successful movies they've had in recent years. All of that money they made, they have lost this year because of the total of their box office losses.
And I'm sorry if that doesn't strike you as a little bit funny. Like if you don't get a little bit of glee from that, just think about the fucking corporate suits in conference rooms fucking focus grouping this content to get you to spend more money on shit, because it's they're not on your side, and it's good that they lost money.
and I can't help but feel bad when they're making so many bizarre decisions.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which is a movie that no one asked for or wanted.
And a movie that I didn't see because I didn't ask for it and didn't want it.
Yeah.
I'm done with Indiana Jones after Crystal Skull, to be completely honest.
Yeah, a lot of people were.
Yeah.
And Disney never really capitalized on building up to Dial of Destiny. Star Wars, there's so much Star Wars shit.
Yeah.
And by contrast, there's hardly any extra Indiana Jones content, you know, video games.
There was a
toys.
young Indiana Jones TV show. You ever see that shit?
I haven't, but
it's not good.
but they've done nothing with the license leading up to Dial of Destiny. And then it comes out. They spent $300 million. $300 million to make an Indiana Jones film.
Yeah.
Where you watch Raiders of the Lost Ark, and if you're going to drag a guy behind a truck in that movie, you know what you do? You drag a guy behind a truck.
That's right.
Those movies are for their time, were considerably pretty cheap.
Right.
Made with a lot of care and love. I can't say that for this new one. And that has been the story of Disney this year, is they've released movies that if they had made them for a little bit cheaper, they probably would have been moderately successful.
Yeah.
But when every movie you're putting out is $200 million, $250 million, $300 million,
yeah,
it can't just be successful. It has to be a knockout hit.
Yeah. And that's that $200 million, $250 million, that's the posted budget of these things. But they're spending so much fucking money marketing them too. Because I don't know about you, but when Dial of Destiny was coming up, I was getting slammed with ads all the fucking time. Like anytime I would like watch something on Hulu, which is owned by Disney, or fucking go on Instagram or go on Twitter, like it was just Dial of Destiny ads in my face like 24/7. So whatever they're spending on the movie, they're probably spending an equivalent amount like in marketing for this shit.
Yeah,
right?
basically double that for marketing with most of these big movies.
And it's like spend less money and make something that's fucking good. Like, you know?
Yeah, and then they had the Haunted Mansion movie, which they put out again in the middle of summer,
Which is such a that is such a stupid decision.
And you know, put that out in October. Like October was a really interesting month because Saw X did relatively well.
Yeah.
Five Nights at Freddy's did very well.
I guess it did, didn't it?
You know, it would have been nice to have another more family-friendly Halloween option, probably.
Right.
And I think Haunted Mansion, I didn't see it, don't really care to. So most people said it was like, okay.
Yeah, but it was
that probably could have fit into that slot.
It would have made, right? It would have made way more money in October. Like, what are they fucking doing?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
And then Wish, it looks like they just farted this thing out and didn't care.
Yeah.
I can't feel bad for them.
No.
It's and I'm wondering how this will change things going forward, particularly with Marvel.
Yeah.
Because other than Guardians of the Galaxy, Marvel had a really rough year.
Yeah, the Marvels was like a huge flop.
Mm-hmm.
Like catastrophic flop.
It's the least successful MCU movie.
Yeah.
Behind like the Incredible Hulk movie with Edward Norton that no one gives a shit about.
That's rough. It's rough to be pulling the caboose behind the Incredible Hulk. A movie that I have seen and think is fine, right? But it's like it did very poorly.
Yeah, and I'll say, just to get the Marvel fans that I'm sure are listening, are great Marvel fan demographic in our audience. Our audience of 30 people.
Yes. There's probably, statistically speaking, it's likely that some of our 30 listeners are Marvel fans.
Yeah. I like superhero movies.
Yeah.
I like comic books. And I was a big fan of Marvel. And then after Endgame came out, which I thought both Infinity War and Endgame were great, they just didn't know how to capture that magic again.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering when the gravy train's going to run out, because it's starting to run out this year. Every Hollywood trend has its heyday, and then it has its rise and its fall. So I'm interested to see what happens next year for Marvel and Warner Brothers, DC as well, because the DC property has had a very bad year as well.
I have a feeling that this may resurface when we start talking about some of our categories that we're going to talk about for the year.
Yeah.
I feel like DC might make an appearance in one of the categories that we're going to talk about on David's list.
Yeah, we'll see.
You know what had a great year? Horror movies.
Okay.
Horror 2023 was a great year for horror, both at the movie theater and direct to streaming. I don't know, you were a little tepid on your response to that take. So do you not agree?
No, I don't disagree. I think for me there was one fantastic horror movie this year.
Yeah.
And then like a lot of good ones that I could kind of go either way on, that I had a fun time with.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit more about this.
Yeah. So there at the box office with horror, like at the movie theater, we started, in my opinion, relatively strong this year with Scream 6, which I thought was a totally worthy entry in the Scream franchise. You can fucking miss me with that Scream 7 without our two leads from 5 and 6 returning.
Yeah, I got into Scream this year.
Yeah,
for the first time in anticipation of Scream 6. I watched all of the movies, had a great time with all of them.
Yeah,
including Scream 6. So excited, like, yes, let's make more of these fucking movies. And then Spyglass had to just shoot themselves in the foot by firing their lead actor for making pro-Palestine statements.
Yeah. Yep. Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega not going to be returning for Scream 7. And I'm like, neither am I. I don't give a shit about seeing a Scream 7.
Well, and they fucked over.
Were you gonna fire those two actresses?
They fucked over Neve Campbell for Scream 5 too.
They did, yeah.
Or
yeah.
for
Six.
that's why she didn't come back for
yeah,
Scream 6.
she didn't return for 6
Right.
because they wouldn't pay her what she's fucking worth. And
Yeah.
it's like, pay Neve Campbell what she's fucking worth, or stop making Scream movies.
Yeah.
Right. And I still saw Scream 6 even though Neve Campbell's not in it, and I liked it. I thought it was a good movie. I like the whole like let's take the franchise out of Woodsboro, put it in New York thing. Later in the year, we got some silly shit that I enjoyed. Even though I wouldn't necessarily say these are good movies. We got Knock at the Cabin. That was actually pretty early as well. Knock at the Cabin, horror thriller. It's M. Night Shyamalan. I have more thoughts about Knock at the Cabin that I'm gonna save for later. But ultimately, a movie that I'm glad got made. I'm glad M. Night still gets to make movies. It feels like he is one of those directors where it's like, they could have put him in movie jail and just never let him make a movie again after Lady in the Water or The Happening or Avatar: The Last Airbender or any of the other huge fucking failures that he's had. And I'm like, I'm so glad that they're still letting M. Night make movies. Because every once in a while he lands for me and I'm like, God damn it, M. Night, you got me again.
I did not see Knock at the Cabin. I was actually quite interested in it.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily an M. Night fan, but it looks good, and it seems like it was received pretty positively.
Yeah,
and he's been on a bit of an upswing, so that's good.
People liked The Beach That Makes You Old, both as a meme and I guess as a movie. I didn't see it.
The Visit was also
people liked The Visit. People liked The Visit, and people like Knock at the Cabin. And I'm gonna save my full thoughts on it for later because this is spoiler alert appearing later in the episode. And then some other silly shit that came out. Fucking Pope's Exorcist.
I'm glad we get to talk about Pope's Exorcist. Because it didn't fit into any of the other categories.
Yeah. I had planned to talk about horror in 2023.
If we had done a Best Actor category, you know who I might have put in that? Russell Crowe, baby.
Riding around on his little Vespa, doing the worst Italian accent you've ever heard.
He put that movie on his back.
Yes. Russell Crowe in The Pope's Exorcist is the most committed performance of this year, I'm pretty sure. Like, yeah. No, he's carrying that whole movie across the finish line. A movie that is bad. A movie that sucks and is bad, and I still gave 3 stars to because I had just such a fucking ball watching it. It's so stupid. It's kind of boring. But goddamn, you got fat Russell Crowe riding a Vespa and he's talking like a Mario. And I'm like, you got me. I'll watch 12 of these. I don't give a shit.
I don't want to spoil Pope's Exorcist for anyone who is unenlightened. But the end of that movie does in fact set up no less than 200 sequels.
Yeah.
And I want to see all of them.
As do I. Talk to Me is another highlight. I think that's the great horror movie that you were saying.
It narrowly missed my top 5. Spoiler alert. But Talk to Me was excellent.
It rips. Talk to Me is fantastic. We both really loved it. I think we already recommended it on a previous episode.
Yeah.
We also had Evil Dead Rise. I know that one was divisive among the fan base. You know, some Evil Dead fans loved it, some of them hated it. I'm in the love camp. I really enjoyed Evil Dead Rise.
And that was one that was going to go direct to streaming, and then they put it in theaters, and I think it paid off.
It made a shit ton of money. And now they're talking about like what they're going to do with the next one. And it's like, yeah, put these in fucking movie theaters, because people who wear an Evil Dead baseball cap every single day, like me, will go and see this shit, you know? Like, I will always be seated in the theater for an Evil Dead film. You could make 2 or 3 bad ones in a row, and I will show up for all of them and go to the one that comes out after that, because, like, I'm so attached to this franchise. And I know I'm not the only one. Like, in terms of Evil Dead fandom, like, I'm on the low end of fanaticism. Some of these freaks get really wild about this shit, you know? So I'm like, yeah, put them in movie theaters. We'll go.
Yeah.
Anytime there's Deadites in a movie, laughing and having a great time, and you fill that movie wall to wall with disgusting gore, I'm walking out of the theater happy. Yeah, and I will give you my money.
And I rewatched the original Evil Dead trilogy this year, and then saw 2013 for the first time in anticipation for Evil Dead Rise, and had a ball with that movie.
Yeah,
you know, not one of my favorites, but a lot of fun. Bloody as hell. which you always want from an Evil Dead movie, which I always want from a horror movie.
Right.
We don't get enough of those this year. Another one that did that for me was Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Thanksgiving was gory as hell
And-
for a modern theatrically released horror film that has to be somewhat confined to the R rating.
Yeah.
Gory as shit.
And also just so refreshingly earnest, that movie.
Love it. I love a movie that just does what it says on the tin.
Yep. Banger. Loved Thanksgiving. We also this year had Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Dracula on a boat.
Dracula
on a boat.
That shit was silly as hell. I greatly enjoyed it.
Didn't do too well, which I was a little
No.
disappointed about.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a flop. Yeah.
That movie did kind of vanish from my memory a little bit, I have
Also,
to say.
Also, like without spoiling anything, that ending sucked dog shit.
You're not spoiling anything. The ending is just like, and then the rest of Dracula, the book happens.
That's true. But in a way where it's like I was rolling my eyes so hard, like in the theater. I was like, I really enjoyed that movie. You could have cut out the last 4 minutes and it would have been a better movie. There were a couple of direct-to-streaming movies, both found footage, that I want to mention. One good and one very bad.
Oh, a found footage horror movie from Justus.
Wow, imagine that.
Who would have thunk it?
This is untrod territory. Horror in the High Desert Part 2, Minerva, was released this year. Better than the first one. I am so all in on the Horror in the High Desert series. Whenever Horror in the High Desert Part 3 Firewatch comes out, I will be seated on my couch in a pitch black living room, just soaking in every glorious second, because Horror in the High Desert is the best and most exciting thing happening in found footage right now. On the flip side, while we're talking about 2023 in horror,
Is this what I think it is?
we also had Hell House LLC Origins, the Carmichael Manor,
That's what I thought it was.
which sucked shit.
Yeah. So a lot of people said this was good.
They're wrong.
I was. So Justus.
Yeah.
A few months ago,
Yeah.
we're sitting on your couch and you show me, I believe in the same night, if I remember correctly, Horror in the High Desert 1. I
Yes.
did not see the second one. Horror in the High Desert, thought it was really good, really effective for all of the limitations that they had and the low budget. Solid little movie. And we also watched Hell House LLC, which is, to its credit, an okay found footage movie.
It is fine.
But then something stuck with me after that movie. Hell House LLC 2, The Hotel Abaddon,
Yeah.
and Hell House LLC 3, Lake of Fire. Those were looking at me from my Tubi home screen. And I was looking at those low review scores online, and I had to do it.
Yeah. I believe I fully warned you too, where I
You
was like,
did.
2 and 3 are dog shit. You shouldn't watch them.
2 and 3 are some of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life.
3 is maybe the worst movie I've ever seen.
So I watched those, and then I found out Stephen Cognetti, who I'm sure is a lovely person,
Yes.
but I'm about to say a lot of very unkind things about him.
Yes. No direct shade to Stephen Cognetti as a human being.
He had another card trick up his sleeve for us called Hell House LLC Origins, the Carmichael Manor. And when I found out this was coming out, I was like, Justus, we got to do it.
Yeah.
We gotta survive this together.
You know what we did?
Sucked ass.
It was bad.
Steven just gets too wrapped up in this stupid bullshit mythology that he has. And his head goes too far into his own asshole.
Yep.
And he just has to push it. He just
does.
has to push it too far.
You know, people say horror and comedy are very close, right? Where it's like both horror and comedy are about surprising the audience, subverting their expectations. That's how you get the reaction, the big reaction, which is either a laugh or, you know, a scream, a jump scare or whatever. In the same way that bad comedians take jokes too far, they take scares too far, right? It's like so many times in the Carmichael Manor, you saw it when you were watching it with me.
Yeah.
I was like, you have the scare. Like, I'm scared, right? And then they'll take it 1, 2, 3 beats too far, right? And it's like, well, now this is fucking stupid as shit, right? And it's like, just stop the scare 3 beats ago.
There's a relatively minor scare in that movie that I will spoil. It's the red bouncing ball.
Yeah.
There's a red bouncing ball that always just like rolls down the hallway or bounces down the hallway because it's spooky and ooh, ghost. And they do that throughout the movie.
Haven't you seen The Changeling? Ooh, yeah.
And there's moments where it's like, okay, you kind of have something here.
Right.
And then the payoff to that is during the end of the film when they're running through the house and the camera's shaking around and all this shit's happening. From a dark hallway, just like 3 or 4 bouncy balls just get thrown at the camera.
Yes.
Some poor PA hiding in the darkness, just throwing these bouncy balls towards the camera.
Yeah.
And it's like,
what was
why?
scary
What were
wasn't
you doing?
Right. What was scary was not the fact that a red bouncy ball was in the shot. So 4 of them is not scarier than 1.
Those might be a stay tuned.
Yeah.
Those might be.
I think they will be, probably. We'll probably talk about at least one of those movies on this show. Spoiler alert, none of them are the greatest movie ever made. Anyway, just to round out the horror conversation, it came out, it had its theatrical release very, very early in the year. It technically premiered at a film festival last year, then was leaked onto streaming services, but we're counting it as a 2023 film because its wide release was this year, or what kind of limited wide release it got was this year, which is Kyle Edward Ball's Skinamarink.
I imagine we might be returning to that one.
We just might be, David.
Before we exit horror, and we'll just probably say a couple brief words about the strikes and then move on to our categories.
Yeah.
The Meg 2 Trench. You know what's a bad movie? The Meg 2 The Trench. You know what movie I had a great time with? The Meg 2 The Trench.
Yeah.
You know what movie was also apparently very successful this year? Meg 2 The Trench.
Well, good news for you. There's probably going to be a Meg 3.
I hope so.
Big Shark.
Bad movie. Don't recommend it to anyone unless you're a fucking sadist like I am. And I loved the Meg, the first Meg. I was high as shit when I saw it. And that's probably why I loved it.
Probably.
But if you liked the Meg, I think the Meg 2 does everything worse than the original Meg. There's a moment where they literally stop the plot so Jason Statham can have a Temple of Doom conveyor belt fight with a bad guy. Fucking movie.
I didn't know Jason Statham was in the Meg 2.
He was in the Meg 1.
Oh shit. Okay. Yeah. Do you wanna move on to the strike stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say other than the strikes happened this year.
Yeah, it was a big thing that happened for movies this year, for sure.
Big thing that happened. Hopefully, the victories that were won in those strikes lead to better things.
Yeah.
And we stand in solidarity with writers and actors.
Yeah, it sounds like the deal that they got was a good one. I was reading some of the stuff that they won in the deal, and it sounds like it was a pretty big win. Obviously, the fight for equitable working conditions and fair pay is one that is never done, right? Because we can win something in 2023, and then the corrupt institutions that cause this inequity in the first place and these exploitative working conditions are immediately going to regroup and try and figure out how they can get out of paying people what they're worth.
I think with all the high profile stories this year about workers being overworked and underpaid and projects just being deleted at the whim of greedy CEOs like Bob Iger and David Zaslav, the people who make these movies, their lives and their livelihood is more important than ever. And I hope that this very strange year leads to some positive change for people working in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So I think that's it for our summary of 2023. So we have a few different categories that we wanted to go through before we get to our top fives. So we have worst movie of 2023, most surprising, and most disappointing. So Justus, let's keep, we already kind of brought down the conversation with our discussion of the strikes. Let's keep the bad feels going.
Yeah.
What's the worst movie you saw this year?
Oh, it was Hell House LLC Origins: The Carmichael Manor. That was a big stinky pile of shit. And we've already said everything that needs to be said about it. But yeah, bad fucking movie. Worst movie released in 2023 that I saw. David, what is your worst movie of 2023?
So I don't think I've had the pleasure or the displeasure, maybe, of saying these next 3 words in this order on the podcast, because we haven't covered a movie that's worse than this one. But I'm going to talk about The Flash. Fuck this movie. Fuck this movie.
I knew this was
Fuck
gonna be.
this movie.
Yeah.
Fuck this movie so hard.
Obviously, I didn't see it.
Honorable mention, fuck this movie, to Sound of Freedom, which I haven't actually seen because it is QAnon fear porn.
Yes, right-wing propaganda, yes.
But The Flash was, if I may borrow a phrase from Stephen Root's character in No Country for Old Men,
I think you may.
a colossal goat fuck. So I try to go into a movie with an open mind.
Yeah.
I really do. I did not expect to like this movie.
Right.
So that did
You
affect
I'm
my
sorry.
expectations.
You didn't expect to like DC Studios' The Flash, starring multi-convicted felon Ezra Miller.
I've been
person who no one should ever be left alone in a room with, Ezra Miller, because they will kidnap you or assault you or whatever.
Yeah, I haven't liked DC's output since Man of Steel. They have done nothing interesting with these characters, and they have they've played catch up with Marvel for the last 10 years. They've reoriented the franchise so many times. None of the movies have been terribly successful. The most successful one, Batman vs. Superman, still like underperformed too. It's not an outright bomb, but it's nowhere near the success that Marvel has had.
Yeah.
Not that that matters, but it's like Warner Brothers just doesn't know what to do with DC.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say the Batman, which is not part of this universe, was a great film. And The Flash was just the decaying, rotting corpse of this franchise being dug up and pissed on for 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
I snuck into this movie. I've never snuck into a movie, but I watched Spider-Man into the whatever the Spider. I don't remember the title, but it's the Spider-Verse one.
Spider-Verse movie,
Across the Spider-Verse.
I don't
We went
fucking
into
know.
the Spider-Verse, and now we're going across it. And then presumably when they make the third one, we're going beyond it, I think.
I didn't see it. I'm glad people like their Spider-Man cartoon.
But watching that and then walking into The Flash was like hydrogen bomb versus coughing baby. So bad. The Flash is one of the most vile and reprehensible things I've seen in my life.
Yeah.
Artistically. It is an artistically bankrupt, artistically corrupt film that has an annoying performance by convicted felon Ezra Miller at the center of it. Michael Keaton sleepwalking his way through that movie, and I do not blame him.
No, yeah. Get that money, Michael Keaton.
Michael Shannon, the great Michael Shannon, I will say.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do in this movie.
And that's a crime in and of itself, to give Michael Shannon nothing to do.
Who is one of the best parts of Man of Steel.
Yeah.
Like, as General Zod in Man of Steel, he is giving that performance his all. None of that shows up in The Flash. And again, I don't blame him. I think he said in an interview it wasn't very fulfilling project for him.
Yeah, I imagine standing in a goofy ass suit in front of a green screen delivering the worst dialogue anyone's ever heard is probably not very fulfilling for an actor.
Just an agonizing 2.5 hours with a terrible plot that meanders and goes nowhere. The last 30 minutes of that movie have some of the worst visual effects I've seen in my life.
Yeah, even though I didn't see the movie, I've seen a lot of those clips because they make the rounds on social media.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this looks like dog shit.
I've seen Fortnite ads with more artistic integrity.
I have seen PS3 cutscenes that look better than this shit.
And then the nail in the coffin at the end is they digitally insert all of these other actors that have been played DC characters throughout the years.
Yeah. They piss on Christopher Reeve's grave for
Yeah.
a second.
It is an It is anti-art. I don't have another word for it. I detest this movie. I hate this movie. I rated it a 1 out of 5 on Letterboxd, and honestly, I was probably too generous with it.
Yeah.
Fuck that movie.
Yeah. Fuck that movie.
And fuck you, Ezra Miller.
Also fuck Hell House LLC Origins the Carmichael Manor, but at least that was fun to watch. I didn't see The Flash. If I had seen The Flash, I'm sure it would be probably my worst as well. But so do we want to move on to our next category?
Yeah.
All right. David, tell me your most surprising film that you released in 2023. And when we say most surprising, I think that's kind of like subjective, but I think the idea here is just basically one that either subverted our expectations or one that we had no expectations for that like really impressed us, right?
Right. So my actual most surprising movie is in my top 5.
Yeah.
So for this category, the runner-up, I'll say, is something that kind of narrowly missed my top 5. It's up there, but it's Asteroid City.
Oh yeah.
I'm not a huge Wes Anderson guy. I love Moonrise Kingdom. That was, I think, the first thing I saw from him. And then I watched Grand Budapest and didn't really like Grand Budapest. I watched some of his other films like Life Aquatic and Rushmore, and I wasn't particularly into those. I liked Fantastic Mr. Fox. I liked Isle of Dogs, but his theatrical live-action films, I wasn't expecting to like this.
Yeah.
I wasn't anticipating it, and I felt like his style for me had become a little played out. And then my dad, of all people, my dad, who he watches dramas and comedies with my mom that I've never heard of or that I never would have expected.
Yeah.
Like, he loved A Man Called Otto with Tom Hanks. He was all about A Man Called Otto. I was like, Dad, wait, what the fuck? And we talked about Don't Worry, Darling on our Nobody Sleeps in the Woods episode with Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight too with Tony. I saw that movie because he wanted to see it.
Yeah.
And he suggested that we go see Asteroid City. And he's like, it kind of reminds me of that Don't Worry, Darling. And I'm like, Dad, no, shut up. You know what you're talking about. Because they both have a 50s, 60s kind of aesthetic thing going on. But
Right.
they're very different.
Yeah.
Asteroid City was so good.
Nice.
I loved every minute of that film.
Yeah.
Beautiful, first of all. One of the most gorgeous movies released this year. The production design, the set they built for that thing is nuts. And it was such a heartwarming story about people coming together and trying to find human connection in a quarantine that basically happens because of this event that occurs at this astronomy festival.
Yeah.
And so they're all confined to this small town for a few days until the quarantine lifts. And as someone like all of us who just came out of an ongoing global pandemic, a movie about people coming together and trying to find human connection and deal with grief was the exact thing that I needed. It is also hilarious and clever and features a ton of great performances from Wes Anderson regulars. Jason Schwartzman in that movie in particular was so good. And Margot Robbie has a very brief scene in that movie that I think was probably her best performance this year.
Hell yeah.
Barbie was great. She stole the show for those few minutes that she was on screen in Asteroid City. So highly recommend it. Had a great time with it, and kind of makes me want to go back and reevaluate some of the other Wes Anderson films that I've seen.
Nice.
Justus, what was the most surprising movie of the year for you?
It's one that we already talked about, but I will add some additional thoughts. It's good because we talked about horror already. A lot of mine are going to be ones that we already talked about because I mostly only saw horror movies this year. Most surprising for me, I have Thanksgiving down for this one because I went into that movie with my expectations beneath the floor, right? Where I was like, Eli Roth, I had never, I hadn't seen any Eli Roth movie. And I had consumed a lot of like online vitriol about how bad Eli Roth is.
Yeah, I
right?
have too.
And so I was just like, okay, I have no expectations from Eli Roth because I hear people think his movies are bad, right? And then also, I had never seen the Grindhouse trailer because I've never seen Grindhouse. That then this movie was inspired by, right? So I didn't have that connection to it. And basically, the Podmaster just showed me a trailer for this movie and was like, "Hey, do you want to see this?" And I was like, "That looks fucking dumb and bad. Sure, like I'll go see it. It's a Thanksgiving horror movie, sure." And then like we made plans and you and I went with the Podmaster, and I was like sort of blown away by how not bad it was and by how it was good. Actually, it was just like a delightful surprise for me, and maybe it wouldn't have been a surprise if this wasn't my first Eli Roth, because I know you enjoyed Hostel this year.
Yeah.
But for me, it was just one of those movies that I went in with basically sub-zero expectations, and I walked out and gave it 3.5 stars, and so that was 3.5 stars higher than I expected to give it. I was just like, oh, this movie fucking rips. Like, this is really good. It's like, it's fun. It's not, like, again, it's self-aware without being too winky. It's gory as shit. The performances are totally passable. There's a couple really wacky moments that occur. The comedy was all right in it. You know, like I don't have a major complaint about that movie, and I expected to dislike at least one thing about it. And ultimately I kind of didn't dislike anything about it.
Yeah, I mean there's definitely issues there, but it's like it was fine. It was fun.
The Podmaster and I have basically been like, will we watch this every year around Thanksgiving? And we're like, yeah, maybe. Like,
yeah, I had seen the trailers, completely forgetting about the Grindhouse connection.
yeah.
And I was like, oh, if Eli Roth's doing a Thanksgiving slasher. A Thanksgiving slasher sounds fun, but I've heard all this bad shit about Eli Roth. But this looks kind of good, maybe. So when I watched Hostel, which is one of his more celebrated films, but also has that association with like torture porn, quote unquote, and I ended up really liking Hostel, I was like, fuck, I think this Thanksgiving movie might be good. And yeah, great time. Had a really good time with it.
Yeah.
Liked it ever so slightly more than Scream 6 as far as a slasher that has kind of a whodunit angle to it. You know, both this and Scream 6 don't really pay off the whodunit in a super well done, mind blowing way, but they're fun mysteries along the way still.
Yeah. Initially, like right after I walked out of Thanksgiving, I think I put it under Scream 6. I think the farther away I get from both of those movies, the more I'm like, maybe Thanksgiving was better. Like, I think I'm with you on that. Right? Where I'm like, that kind of was maybe the best slasher I saw this year, which is like surprising.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so that's mine.
Okay, Justus, I will ask you then. What's the most disappointing movie you've seen this year? And I think there's a few ways you can interpret disappointing. So
one of the things that is disappointing for me in a movie is when you're expecting something that is surprising or shocking from a piece of art, because you know that that's something that the filmmaker is known for, and then it kind of just ends up being fine. You know, sometimes fine is disappointing, right? Sometimes bad is less disappointing than just fine. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. So with that qualifier, I promised we would talk more about it. Knock at the Cabin, fine movie, okay movie. Also my most disappointing watch of this year.
Okay.
Because, and I already qualified this earlier by saying, I am excited to see M. Night do more things. I would like to see M. Night go back to writing, because his weirdest shit has been stuff he wrote. This was based on a book, and it felt like a fine adaptation of a book. And I watched it and I was like, anybody could have made that. It didn't feel like an M. Night movie.
It didn't have that juice.
Yeah, just kind of bummed me out. And so like I said, I'm excited for that it did well, and I hope M. Night keeps making more movies. I just hope they're weirder and more his shit.
So do you want Mark Wahlberg talking to plants again?
No, The Happening is a worse movie. But I almost would say, like Lady in the Water, I'd be more interested in rewatching than Knock at the Cabin.
Yeah.
Right? Because Knock at the Cabin, I know what I'm getting on a rewatch. I know I'm just going to be like, oh yeah, that was fine again. Right? Lady in the Water, I'm like, I remember that movie being bad, but like, there's also stuff that I want to go back and revisit with that. You know?
I know he put a lot of his own personal. That's a very personal film for him because I think he made it for his kids.
Yeah, it's like a bedtime story that he told
Yeah.
his daughter.
And
yeah.
he's been doing lots of director for hire stuff kind
Right.
of intermittently recently. So
But also all of his best shit has really been from his brain, you know? Like, I'm pretty sure he wrote or at least co-wrote the script for Unbreakable. He wrote The Sixth Sense, you know? The Village is divisive. I know a lot of people hate it. I'm pro The Village personally. He wrote that, right? And I'm like, oh, those are creative, weird ideas. And those are his best movies, right? And I'm like, just let him do weird shit again.
here's my other question, which is I apologize for asking it because I actually hate when people ask this question.
Yeah.
But if M. Night's name wasn't on it, if
Yeah.
it was just some guy like you said, would your reaction still be kind of disappointment, or would you be like, "This is a promising director"?
I think, yeah, no, I think it's a good question, and I'm not annoyed by it. I think I would have been more positive toward the movie if it hadn't been M. Night who
Okay.
had directed it, because
Okay.
it's just not what I want from him, you know. And that's just my personal feelings about it. David, your most disappointing movie of the year.
So I was kind of like you. I was expecting great things from this movie. I was expecting to love this movie. I was expecting it to be in my top 5. And that's Gareth Edwards, the creator. I love when a director, I often love when a director gets to make the movie that is just a mashup of all of their favorite movies. Because often their favorite movies are also my favorite movies.
Yeah.
And when a director can have fun and make something creative, we get a Quentin Tarantino, we get Hobo with a Shotgun, we get Neil Marshall's Doomsday, which
Hobo
I
with a
which I
Shotgun,
love.
by the way, the biggest stay tuned.
Biggest stay tuned in the fucking world
in this podcast's history. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, continue.
But when they can mash up their influences in a way that acknowledges them and also builds something new with them, I'm so happy. I also love well done, great looking science fiction that's original. And the creator is both a mashup of Gareth Edwards' favorite movies and both great looking science fiction that is original. And I felt nothing while watching it. Beautiful, gorgeous looking movie made for like 80 million or something, which is mind blowing considering how good that movie looks.
Right. And how bad things with $250 million budgets this year looked.
Like The Flash. And I don't even mind that it's derivative. You know, I how many fucking sci-fi movies have ripped off Blade Runner?
Right.
Like, when it comes to artificial intelligence in movies, we've been doing Blade Runner for years. Even something like Ex Machina, which is one of my favorite science fiction movies of the past decade, completely derivative of Blade Runner in a few places, because it's just like, how far can you go with something?
Right.
The stories have been told.
Yeah. And Blade Runner's good.
Yeah.
We like watching Blade Runner over and over again.
And yet, the creator just had nothing to it. It had no juice.
Yeah.
To overuse the word juice. The characters weren't very compelling. John David Washington, in particular, who I've wanted to really be impressed by him. I've been waiting for that moment. Was not bringing it. The kid actor who plays the AI in the film, was great. Really, really, really strong performance. But no one else really stood out to me. The world, as gorgeous as it was, didn't give me anything to care about in it. And there were very interesting, kind of problematic implications with the world building, where most of it takes place in Asia. And a lot of the Asian characters were AI robots.
Huh.
And so there was this weird kind of Orientalism thing going on there, where we're like, the U.S. is anti-AI, but Asia is pro-AI.
Right.
So we have all of these characters who are antagonistic,
right,
who are
that's
robots and AI.
That's weird.
It's weird, right?
Weird choice.
And there's some okay action in it, but at the end I just felt really hollow and left left really disappointed by it, which admittedly I should have expected from Gareth Edwards because
he's hit and miss.
His movies look great and this one looks great, but the stories that he's able to tell just haven't really lived up to my expectations. And I was hoping that this would be something on the level of like District 9.
Yeah.
You know, like that the first time I saw District 9 and how cheap that movie was and how good that looked and how well its themes were done for me at the time. I've been yearning for another great original science fiction idea in Hollywood, especially because science fiction now is just superheroes.
Yeah. A lot of it, yeah.
And I'm worried that studios are going to learn the wrong thing from this movie and they're not going to fund original science fiction. No.
Right.
Just make sure it's good.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I am leaning positive on it, but it just left no impression on me, really.
Damn. Well, hopefully we get more original sci-fi in the near future. Although even in the non-original camp, at least we have more Denis Villeneuve exploring the world of Arrakis.
Yes, we do.
We'll get to that a little bit later.
Yes, we do.
To look forward to. But before we get to that, before we get to upcoming movies in 2024, we should do our top 5s for the year.
Yeah.
For 2023.
We did not see every movie released this year.
Oh no, I saw almost no movies released this year. I did mention in the first episode ever of The Greatest Movie Ever Made that I am not qualified to be a host of a movie podcast. That's really coming through today because I saw almost none of the big movies that came out this year. We've already talked about a shit ton of movies that I didn't see. I did not see any superhero movie this year. So, I was talking about the Marvels being a flop. We mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy 3. We mentioned The Flash. I didn't see any of that shit. I also only saw a couple of like the big like award contender movies for this year.
Yeah.
I mostly I saw the horror movies that I talked about.
Yeah. I saw 29 movies released this year.
I think I saw 15.
So it's not a comprehensive list.
It's just our personal feelings about the movies that we saw that were released this year.
Justus, what's the 5th best movie that you saw this year?
Coming in at number 5, I have a movie that I have already mentioned. Horror in the High Desert 2 Minerva, baby.
Okay.
It made it into my top 5.
Awesome.
Legitimately behind, I believe it's on my found footage horror ranking, behind The Blair Witch Project, Wreck, and Lake Mungo as the, what would that be, 4th best found footage horror movie I've ever seen. Maybe it might be 5th. It might also be below Be My Cat, A Film for Anne or something like that. Stay tuned for Be My Cat, A Film for Anne. Movie that if you have never heard of, you should just not learn anything about and then listen to our eventual episode on it. Anyway, Horror in the High Desert 2 Minerva. I am a huge found footage fan, as listeners to this podcast know. This was highly anticipated for me because I fucking loved the first one. It dropped this year on streaming. I gobbled it up. I liked it even better than the first movie. I'm so fucking excited for what Dutch Marich, the director of these things, is going to do next. He's got another 2 planned. Like I said, one is releasing next year. And I'm all in on Horror in the High Desert. Give me as many of these movies as you can make, Dutch Marich. 2 really blew me away. And 2 was also, like, I had seen the first one, and I was like, okay, where's this going to go from here? Does this franchise have legs? Is this going to be a disappointment compared to the first one? And no, it's even fucking better. And I hope they continue getting even better and better as he hones his skills as a filmmaker, and just, like, continues experimenting with the genre. Because one of the things I love about this second entry in the franchise so much is that it is one of the most creative and inventive found footage horror movies I've ever seen, which is something that genre is sorely lacking a lot of the time. So yeah, that's number 5.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll have to move that up on my watch list because I like that first one.
You're not gonna like it as much as me, David.
I know. I don't like any found footage as much as you.
Yes.
But
yeah, that's the qualifying. That's the asterisk next to everything that I just said, which is you will only like that movie as much as I did if you are a fucking found footage freak like I am. But anyway, you should still give it a watch.
Yeah, and if there's a textbook definition of a movie that says "Don't go hiking alone," Horror in the High Desert, baby.
Yeah.
Cool.
It rocks. What is the 5th best movie that you saw this year, David?
They say he's got to go, 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 Godzilla.
I'm really glad we're rule of 3ing this.
We're rule of 4ing this.
Oh, is this the 4th time?
I've talked about Godzilla for 4 consecutive episodes.
Did you sing the song 4 times? Or is
No.
Okay, so we're rule of 3ing the song.
Okay, yeah, we're rule of 3ing the song. It's Godzilla -1, baby.
Yeah, bitch.
I just watched this.
Yeah.
I want to say a little bit more about Godzilla in general. I think there is a divide among the fan base between the fans of the American films and the fans of the Japanese films. The Americans say that the Japanese films are all stupid and silly and people running around in silly costumes, beating each other up. And the Japanese fans say that the American films are just that with CGI, and they miss the point of Godzilla. My opinion is we can have both.
Yes.
I am excited for the new Godzilla movie that's coming out from Legendary Pictures. I think we can have both. I think they've always coexisted together. I think Japan has its serious Godzilla films and has its silly ones, and America has its serious Godzilla films and its silly ones.
Yeah.
And as much as I think that we can have both, the core of Godzilla has always been a uniquely Japanese story.
Right.
Even in the silliest entries, we are addressing the trauma and the fears of the first and only nation that has felt the devastation of the nuclear bomb. And that runs throughout all those movies. We're always there's some mention of nuclear energy, nuclear weapons in those films. And I've only seen 20 of these movies, so I'm not an expert by any means. I just watched 20 of them in the span of 2 weeks.
I would call you an expert. Or mentally ill.
I can wholeheartedly say that Godzilla -1 is the best Godzilla film aside from the original.
That is high praise.
This film floored me.
Hell yeah.
I was on the edge of my seat in this theater. I was actually crying. I was completely riveted by this movie. It is a movie about Japan coming out of the ashes of World War II, trying to rebuild, and then Godzilla shows up and brings them even further down than they thought they were. It is a movie about family and tenacity in the human spirit in the face of annihilation. It is a movie about a government that sees its people as expendable.
Yeah.
And sees human life as expendable. And it's completely inspiring. It is a beautiful looking film. Some of the most horrific destruction and depiction of Godzilla that this series has ever had. And I am so happy that it's been successful. Because, this is the first movie that Toho has come out with since Shin Godzilla, so it's been almost 10 years. We're coming up on the 70th anniversary of the Godzilla franchise, and they released one of their best films this year, and it came to America, and it did well. That's amazing. Fantastic movie. I can't recommend it enough. I should mention, the characters in pretty much all the Godzilla movies, I would say, are underwhelming and the least interesting part. The characters in this movie are extremely well performed and well written.
Nice.
It's melodramatic. There's some leaps of logic that you have to make, but there is a lot of really powerful human emotion at the center of this movie. And go out and see it. It's a great fucking movie.
Hell yeah. I am going to have to see some Godzilla movies because this is 4 straight weeks of you recommending Godzilla movies. And I am interested. I just need to I need to listen back to our last 3 episodes and pick up your recommendations and start watching some of these things because I love so much of the thematic stuff that you talk about when you talk about Godzilla, and I need to get into the world. Maybe that's my other New Year's resolution for 2024 is to watch some Godzilla movies.
Nothing would make me happier.
David, we can ping pong back and forth here and keep it on you for your number 4 best movie of 2023.
So my number 4 is actually the first movie I saw from 2023, all the way back on January 2nd.
Yeah.
And I rewatched it last night to make sure it still held up, and boy, howdy it does. Brandon Cronenberg's science fiction horror nightmare, Infinity Pool.
Yeah, I'm really bummed that I didn't get a chance to watch this before we recorded this episode, because I would have liked to be able to talk about it with you on mic. But yes, I have heard great things from you, and then also a lot of negative stuff about this movie.
It was kind of polarizing. But I like David Cronenberg quite a bit. And I had watched Brandon Cronenberg's other films in anticipation for this, which are both great.
Yeah, we're both big fans of Possessor. I haven't seen Antiviral yet, but
yeah. But Possessor's awesome. And then this was coming out, and I went to go see it with a friend. And Justus, do you ever feel like you watch a movie and you get it? Like you understand this movie at every potential level it can be interpreted,
yes,
or understood or appreciated.
Yes.
You get it?
Yeah.
That's Infinity Pool for me.
Hell yeah.
I don't even know if I can exactly put it into words, but even watching it in the theater, I was like, oh, I know what this movie. This Brandon Cronenberg is telepathically communicating to me specifically through this movie.
That's one of the most beautiful experiences, in my opinion, that you can have as a consumer of any type of art. Whether it's music, visual art, movies, whatever, right? Is feeling like the person who created the art is communicating directly to you and that you get what they're saying. Like, that's such an exciting thing to feel.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad to hear that you had that reaction to this movie. It makes me even more excited to see it.
Yeah. So Infinity Pool is like I said, it's kind of a science fiction horror film about a country known for its tourism that has a pretty high poverty rate. There's a really high gap between the rich and the poor. And if you commit a crime in that country as a foreigner, you are put to death. Like you have the death penalty for most of the major crimes in this country. But if you are rich enough, you can afford to have a double created, and the double will be executed in your place.
Mm.
And it really just uses that idea as a jumping off point to talk about, first of all, wealth and class disparity. And for me, the thing that I really pick up on is just like the savagery and the sadism of the human condition.
Yeah.
And what happens to people when you've conquered the fear of death.
Right.
And what happens to a person when they have experienced something like that.
Yeah. Not just conquered the fear of death, it sounds like, but also like the fear of like consequences. Yeah. Just in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is a Justice Burkett evil film.
Yeah, baby.
To me, at least. And
we'll see how I feel about it when I watch it. But I love hearing that though.
Just the depth of human depravity and filth in that movie. Mia Goth is incredible,
as she usually is. Yeah.
Alexander Skarsgård, who I enjoy quite a bit as an actor, is asked to do a lot of things in that movie, and he commits so very hard to it.
One of the things he's asked to do in that movie is show his cock and balls, right?
Do
you see his dick in that movie?
It's possible that it's in the uncut version.
Okay. I just feel like I remember hearing that you saw his dick in that movie. Maybe not.
He is there is a lot of nudity.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail your very sincere praise.
No, you're right.
Film.
There are many cocks and balls and vaginas and boobs. I don't remember if I specifically saw Alexander Skarsgård's in it.
Yeah. I feel like I remember people talking about Alexander Skarsgård's dick in this movie, but maybe I'm conflating it with something else.
I did see his ass, so he is naked in it.
You know what? That's almost as good.
You know, much like his father, Brandon Cronenberg's kind of a freak.
Yeah, kind of a horny little freak.
Kind of a little horny little freak.
Oh yeah, I got that when I watched Possessor. A movie that has a close-up of an erect penis.
Yeah.
Multiple close-ups
There must be
of an erect penis.
There must be an erect cock in the uncut version of Infinity Pool that
Yeah.
I just don't have access to. I don't know what else they could have cut from that movie, because there is lactating nipples, which is something I've not seen depicted in a motion picture.
Interesting.
Maybe ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
If you're a sick fuck like me, I think
Yeah.
Infinity Pool is just a beautiful. I love movies that are just a descent into madness.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that's Infinity Pool to a T.
Rad. Fuck yeah.
So, Justus, what's your fourth favorite movie this year?
My fourth favorite film of the year is Chris Nolan's Oppenheimer. Came in at number 4 for me. Banger movie. We talked about it a little bit before. Very kind of heady biopic. Cillian Murphy's performance in that movie is so fucking good. RDJ does such a great performance in that movie. Fucking Emily Blunt in that movie is so fucking good. She doesn't get enough to do. I know that was a complaint a lot of people had. But just anytime she's on screen, I was like, man, Emily Blunt can fucking act. Like, just, yeah, wall-to-wall great performances. There's also like 1,000 of the best character actors currently working in that movie, and they all give amazing performances. But yeah, it was nice to see Chris Nolan walk a step back from action stuff. And kind of turn inward a little bit. I thought a lot of the messages in that movie resonated really hard with me. I think it simultaneously, it is about what it is textually about, which is the creation of the atomic bomb and how we kind of all live under the shadow of mutually assured destruction now in this world, and how terrifying that is. But also, I think that the movie is saying something about the other kind of existential struggles we face as a species, like climate change and what have you. And also there's like a lot in that movie about fascists and how fascism is sort of insidious and sort of shows up in institutions and isn't always immediately recognized and called out and expelled when it does. Just a lot of stuff in there that gave me a lot to chew on and a lot to think about, and also a beautiful movie. I thought it looked great. As is always the case with Chris Nolan, it sounded incredible. Really, really excellent sound design. I expect sound design and sound mixing Oscar nominations, and probably wins for that one. Yeah, Oppenheimer, great fucking movie. Loved it. Thought it was great.
Wow, a real hot take here on the podcast.
I'm allowed to put a very good movie. Actually, my next Oppenheimer and then the two above that are not going to be controversial takes. I feel like.
I can't disagree with anything you said about Oppenheimer. More on that later, possibly. Justus, tell me what your number 3 is.
Number 3, and I know this is going to be showing up on your list, probably in a very high spot. John Wick Chapter 4, baby. John Wick Chapter 4 coming in at number 3 for me. Great fucking movie, John Wick Chapter 4. And I think I'll probably save more thoughts about that movie for you, because I assume you're going to talk about it.
Well, I do want to ask, because I texted you and I was like, Justus, do you want to go see John Wick 4?
Yeah.
And you said, I haven't seen John Wick.
Okay, yeah.
So I want to know, like, a little bit. You watched this series for the first time the week before the movie. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah. So yes, like David just described, he asked me to go see John Wick Chapter 4 with him. I had not seen any John Wick movie. And I was like, I've heard they're good. I'm not opposed to the idea of seeing John Wick 4, but I would like to get caught up on the franchise. And it was sort of a franchise that I had been meaning to watch at some point. And just 4 coming out and you wanting to go see it kind of gave me the impetus to be like, yeah, I'll watch all these things. Because I like action movies. Like, it's a genre that I enjoy already. John Wick 1 was pretty much exactly what I had heard that it was and expected it to be, which is a really excellent action movie starring Keanu Reeves, right? Loved it. Two, for anyone who's seen the franchise, expands the world and gets a little weirder. It's like less like just formulaic action and more like we're building out the whole like universe of John Wick. That one probably landed with me the least well. But I still enjoyed it greatly. I think it's just like dipping your toe for the first time into that big John Wick universe. Sometimes feels a little goofy. It feels a little bit like, okay, we're getting real silly now, and that's not what I thought this franchise was.
Yeah. One kind of teases you with it. It's like, oh, this is a cool thing I wasn't expecting in this movie.
Right.
And then 2 is just jumping off the diving board into the swimming pool.
Right. And 3, I think, hit for me better because I think it embraces the silliness of the whole John Wick universe a little bit better than the second one does, maybe. Or at least that was my impression watching it for the first time. So I thought 3 was a fucking banger. That being said, my favorite John Wick movie is a tie currently between 1 and 4. I think those are both incredible action movies. And I think 1 I like a lot for its simplicity, right? And 4 I like for the total opposite reason, which is that it does 15 million things and it is so fucking long and it is so packed full of the craziest action set pieces that you've ever seen. And I wish that it was like 3.5 more hours. Like I wish that movie was 8 hours long. It's so good. So yeah, like my experience watching all the John Wick movies was positive. But 4 was like a high point, right? And yeah, I'm John Wick pilled. When they make the fucking ballerina spinoff or whatever, like I'll go see that shit. I'm in on the John Wick universe. Although they were talking about a TV show.
The TV show did come out.
It came out. Yeah, I'm not gonna watch that.
Yeah.
But theatrical releases I will be seated for. Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, David, what was your number 3 movie of the year?
That is, I'll say this top 5 it's all pretty tough. They're all about at the same place for me, so it's kind of splitting hairs on some of these. So my number 3 is from our greatest living director, Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon. Harrowing 3.5 hours that makes you reckon with the dark and violent history of all of the terrible things that this country has done to people of color, and beautifully directed by a man who is in his prime and is so late in life.
Yeah.
And reaffirms his towering position among the greatest directors of all time. And it deserves every award that it's nominated for.
Yeah.
And one that I'll need to revisit, like I do with a lot of Martin Scorsese's movies. There's so much to unpack. There's so many details.
Yeah. Not a fun one to revisit, probably. Like it's fun in that it's a good movie and it's fun to watch good movies, but like a hard movie to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except for all of those great grungy looking character actors.
Yes. Yeah. And there's also like there's some funny moments in that movie.
every time a grungy guy who looks like he belongs in the Dust Bowl and for some reason is appearing in HD in this 2023 movie, he says some fucking dumb stupid shit. I laughed my ass off.
Most of the comedy in that movie, which is present, just comes from being like disgusting, hideous white people being very stupid.
Yeah. But I mean, Lily Gladstone, a revelation.
Oh my God!
De Niro doing another one of his more transformative performances that I don't see from him all that much.
Yeah.
Leo possibly doing his best work ever.
Yep.
And near masterpiece for me.
Yep.
One of Martin's best films and my third favorite film of this year.
Oh yeah.
Justus, I have a sense that we're going to keep this conversation going. Tell me about your number 2 favorite movie of the year.
Number 2 of the year for me is Killers of the Flower Moon. We're continuing this train. Killers of the Flower Moon came in at number 2 for me, a narrow number 2, which by the way, I do want to stress. I think David's already figured out what my number 1 pick is, but I want to say I am not arguing in any sane world that this as a number 2 pick is to say that this movie is less good than the movie I have at number 1. It's a subjective ranking. It's just based on my own enjoyment and what the movie's meant to me. I think Killers of the Flower Moon is the best movie that I saw that came out in 2023. It's not at number 1 because it didn't hit me as specifically in a way that that I'll express when I get to my number 1 pick. But I echo everything that David said. It's a fantastic movie. It's harrowing. It's immaculately well made. It is beautifully acted. It is beautifully written. It is gorgeous to look at. I do want to we already talked about it, but I do want to just double down on Lily fucking Gladstone in that movie. Some of, not just the best acting that I saw this year, some of the best acting I have ever seen in anything is Lily Gladstone in Killers of the Flower Moon. I was blown the fuck away by her in this movie. There is so much subtlety in the performance. Every look, every gesture, anytime she's on screen, just the way that she is carrying her body tells you so much about the character, about her past, about what she's feeling in the moment, her internal life. It is crazy how good this performance is. And she better fucking get the Oscar for Best Actress, because otherwise I don't know what we're fucking doing.
I don't know who else deserves it, honestly.
No, nobody that I saw. Granted, I only saw Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, and 13 fucking shitty horror movies this year. I also saw Barbie, but yeah. So yeah, Killers of the Flower Moon is number 2. David, what was your number 2 best movie of the year?
This is the most surprising movie, the actual most surprising movie of the year for me. That's Chris Nolan's Oppenheimer.
Oh yeah.
I don't think that Chris Nolan has made a truly great film since Dark Knight and Inception.
Yeah.
And from there, everything he's done has been progressively worse for me. I think he is a beautiful. He has a great eye for cinematography. He is a great filmmaker. But script-wise, story-wise, character-wise, he's always under-delivered for me. And I think he's highly overrated among film fans in many of his films.
Yeah.
I think Interstellar's good. People overhype the shit out of that movie. Dunkirk's fine. I did not like Tenet at all. And Dark Knight Rises was a woefully disappointing conclusion to a great Batman trilogy, an otherwise great Batman trilogy. So when we were building up the hype to Barbenheimer, I was all in on the Barbie camp, surprisingly. And then Chris Nolan delivered his most mature, his most complex in terms of character. One of his best films ever.
Yeah.
And it blew me away. Pun not intended.
Like the bomb.
Like the bomb did.
It blew you away like the atomic bomb at White Sands.
Yeah. Cillian Murphy. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Right.
A great actor. Did not think he had that level of a performance in him.
Yeah.
Stunning work.
Yeah.
Emily Blunt, great as well. RDJ, fucking Jason Clarke yelling at Cillian Murphy for that whole movie.
Oh yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
And
Damon's great in it.
Yeah, so many great actors in that movie. Beautifully edited. Just so and it's an overwhelming film.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect that out of a biopic of J. Robert Oppenheimer. Like it's not dry, it's not boring, it's not quote unquote Oscar bait. It is a living, breathing, angry film. And I think for me, what puts it over Killers of the Flower Moon, ever so slightly, if I may share something that you expressed to me, is that Killers of the Flower Moon got you thinking about the history of racism in this country, and the role that us both being white men, that white men have played in that, and your role in that as well.
Yes.
And where you fit into that history.
Yep.
And I agree that affected me when watching Killers of the Flower Moon as well. What put Oppenheimer slightly over that for me, if I may, again, as a white man, say something that might be stupid.
I think our listeners are used to it from us.
To me, racism, as seemingly insurmountable of a problem that it is, it can be mitigated and combated through community, through learning about history, through reflecting on history, through personal growth and understanding and education. And that's something that I've gone through as a white person. So as challenging and dark as racism is, it's something that feels like we can overcome it. Oppenheimer is a movie about the decisions that affect millions of lives made in boardrooms by people in suits. And that now that we've unlocked the power of the atom, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And we have put ourselves on a collision course with our own annihilation, and it will likely be decided by rich, greedy politicians and businessmen.
Yeah.
And that horrified me on an existential level to no end.
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think about anything else. And Oppenheimer is truly a powerful, unique experience that I was not expecting from Christopher Nolan. And I'm glad that it was successful. I'm glad that people loved it. And I hope it gets love at the awards season. Because for me, it's the second best film that I saw this year, and one that I have not stopped thinking about since I saw it.
Hell yeah. Fuck yeah. Good movie, Christopher Nolan.
Chris, you made a good one.
Good job, Chris. Yeah. Which of us is gonna go first for top one? For best movie of 2023?
Justus,
Yeah.
why don't you do it? I would stake my life. I would stake the lives of my two darling cats. I would stake my entire fortune
He knows what the movie
on
is.
what this movie is.
In this house. It's Skinamarink, bitch! Okay. Skinamarink was a divisive film. A lot of people hated it. A lot of people loved it. Almost no one loved it as much as I did. So I understand if people think what I don't want is people thinking that I am picking this movie as a joke, as a bit, or just because I liked it more than other people.
As someone who's sitting in the room with him and has heard him talk about this movie many times, I can assure you he is not kidding.
Yes, it's actually my favorite movie of 2023. And I'm glad that it got a theatrical release this year so that I can count it as a 2023 movie. This movie, if you haven't seen Skinamarink, or if you haven't heard the online discourse about Skinamarink, it is unlike any other movie that I think has ever been made and released. It is a horror movie where no characters' faces are ever shown, where dialogue is sparse and hard to hear, and where most of the movie is shots of empty doorways, hallways, the camera tracking a flashlight beam as it shines around various rooms inside the only location in the movie, which is a house. And the characters are two very young children. And the movie is them being tormented by something that is in the house with them. It's weird. It's difficult. It is at times boring. And I am happy to acknowledge that as someone who loves this movie. And it captures the fear of the real human primal lizard brain fear that you feel as a child when you wake up in the middle of the night and your parents are asleep and you're hearing noises in your childhood home, right? it captures that better than literally any horror movie that I have seen has captured a specific type of actual primal human fear. It does it in a way that feels effortless. It does it in a way that feels artistic, right? And I couldn't believe this the first time I watched it because I was riveted to the screen. I was so intensely connected to what was happening. And what was happening was a fucking camera with a grain filter on it being pointed at a doorway, you know? And it's just like something about the way Kyle Edward Ball paces this thing, structures this thing, cuts it together. The work that he does with the camera, the work that he does with the sound, it all fucking hit for me. And I was so fucking scared watching this movie. And I was fucking scared the second time I watched it. And last night I watched this movie again, which I have not told David yet. Because I wanted to make sure that it was actually number one and that I wasn't just pulling this out of my ass, right? And being like, oh yeah, Skinamarink scared me real bad. Like I watched it again last night and holy fucking shit. It is crazy that this movie exists. It's crazy it got a theatrical release. It's crazy that it made money. And I cannot wait to see what Kyle Edward Ball does next because nobody is taking the genre as far as him. And it made me feel like I was 5 years old again, having a nightmare. And that's an amazing thing for a movie to be able to do to a 30-year-old man. It's my movie of the year.
Yeah, when a movie's quiet for an hour and then it plays the loudest sound possible, yeah, that's gonna make me jump.
Fuck off.
So I'll comment on this.
Yeah.
Skinamarink was a divisive movie, and as tends to happen with divisive movies, it's kind of in the middle on it. And I walked into this with no expectations other than just the word of mouth and hearing it was good. Didn't even watch a trailer. And I saw it in theaters with an audience of 8 people, including myself. And after the first 20 minutes, that was an audience of 4 people. And I like it. It's also 100 minutes long.
Yes.
It's also slow as shit.
Yes.
It's also
true.
boring as shit in a lot of points.
That's admittedly true. Yes.
And I haven't seen it since then. And also the other thing about the theater experience, he mentioned the film grain. This is the most oppressive, heavy use of film grain I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah.
It is to someone who probably doesn't watch the type of movies that we normally do. Between the film grain and just the low dialogue quality, it's almost unwatchable.
Yeah.
With how overwhelming those effects are. And I think seeing that on a smaller screen rather than blasted into my eyeballs would have made it a slightly more palatable experience in that regard. But thematically, very interesting film, and did, to its credit, effectively make me scared in my own house when I got home that night.
Yeah.
And it taps into something really interesting, like you said, like the feeling of being a 5-year-old kid at home alone in the dark, which not a lot of movies have done in the way that Skinamarink does. I am really interested to see what Kyle Edward Ball does next. Maybe he makes Skinamarinks with a $sign. So, not anywhere near my top 5 or even my top 10, but a solid movie. Just not entirely hidden for me on that first viewing, but yeah. I should probably watch it again.
I will say, anyone who is medium or negative on Skinamarink, this is a movie that I love that I won't fight anybody on, right? Because it's like, I totally get hating this movie, It just, it was made for me, Like Kyle Edward Ball made this movie for me, and I'm glad I saw it because it was for me. But I totally get it landing not as well for other people because it's a weird fucking movie. It's a very weird movie. Yeah. Last thing I'll say about it is just thematically, I think that there's bigger things at play here as well. You mentioned the theme, so I did just want to mention, I also think the movie is about how when you are a child, you feel protect. Some of us, at least, who grew up fortunate, felt protected and felt safe, and felt comfortable, because of the presence of parents or other caretakers, right? And how when you're an adult, that leaves those figures leave your life, either because you move away and they're a long distance away, or because they, time goes on and you lose those people. And the monsters that torment you as a child don't. They stay in the shadows waiting for us when we're at our darkest moments. The monsters, the metaphorical monsters, the demons that we acquire during childhood, which is often a very traumatic period of life, follow us and wait to prey on us until we are alone in the dark. And I think that is what this movie is about and why it landed so well for me. David, what is your number one movie of 2023?
Anyone who knows me and knows my opinion on movies knows that I'm not one to give out 5 out of 5s lightly, or even like on the first viewing. I kind of think that's special, and there's a select number of films that I have given a 5 out of 5 to, and there's movies that I've watched for years and years and years that I love and adore that may never get a 5 out of 5 rating from me. This is the first movie that I have given a 5 out of 5 in a theater on first viewing in over 10 years. The last one was fun little sidebar here. Kick-Ass, directed by Matthew Vaughn. Loved that shit in high school.
Yeah, that's a big high school boy movie.
Rewatched it this year. Doesn't hold up for me.
Yeah,
but what did hold up immediately, and on second viewing as well, it's John Wick Chapter 4.
Yeah, bitch.
Chad Stahelski. With the first John Wick movie, he made one of the greatest action movies ever, I would say. Or at least of that decade. Then he just did that 3 more times.
Yeah.
And after John Wick Chapter 3 reaching such incredible heights of stunt work and choreography and visual, just the visual feast that these movies are, especially 3 and 4, I was like, how can they take this further? And then I heard it was 3 hours long, and it's the best 3 hours of my life.
Yeah.
One of the best theatrical experiences I've had ever, period. It's everything that movie does is so perfectly attuned to my what I love from an action movie. It is beautifully choreographed. The stunt work is incredible. It is violent as hell. There's so much character and personality to that movie. It is steeped in its influences. Everything from John Woo to neo-noir films to 80s action. It's all over the place. Donnie Yen is incredible.
Yeah.
Hiroyuki Sanada. Hiroyuki motherfucking Sanada.
Yeah.
One of the greatest Japanese actors ever.
Yeah.
Crushing it in that movie.
Yeah.
Fucking Rina Sawayama.
Yeah.
Who is primarily a pop star.
Yeah.
Is in this movie, and she does her own action, and she's great.
Yeah.
And Keanu Reeves, the man probably says 20 words in the movie, but he sells every single one of them.
Yeah, and after like 4 of them, I'm crying.
And that's the other thing too. I think 2 and 3 get a little bit away from that emotional core of that first one.
Yeah.
And this one brings it back. And
Yeah.
it does it so well. It continuously tops itself.
Yeah.
After the first hour, it's like the best John Wick movie.
Yeah.
After-
And we haven't even gotten to Scott Adkins yet.
And Scott Adkins in a fat suit.
Yeah.
The great Scott Adkins, you put him in a fat suit, and he still delivers an incredible performance, and an incredible action performance.
That fight scene in the Berlin nightclub would be the best action sequence in any movie if it was in any other movie, and it's not even the best one in that movie. Yeah. Like in any other movie, like that's the sequence. And in John Wick, it happens like about halfway, and it's like one of the best ones, but it's not even number one.
Yeah,
Like, it's crazy.
it's like the last hour of that movie is just John Wick getting from point A to point B, and all of Paris is trying to kill him.
Yeah.
And
Oh man, him falling down those stairs. I was dying in the theater. I was like, "Oh my god."
and you knew it was gonna happen too.
Yeah, but then just seeing him do it and just being like, and now he's got to go up again. It's just, man.
It's it's a masterpiece. If we ever cover it on the show, I think my opinion is pretty clear on it.
Yeah.
You know, so
That episode will be
spoilers for
5
that
hours
episode.
long.
I again, like, you know, like you said, Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, probably better movies objectively and definitely more thematically deep and important. But as far as speaking to the core of my being, it's John Wick Chapter 4 all the way.
Yeah.
It's John Wick Chapter 4 all the way. I don't know what else I could say about it. I've been sucking this movie's dick since it came out.
It's a good movie.
It's a good movie. It's going to be hard for any action movie, let alone another John Wick movie, to beat it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's my number one, baby.
Hell yeah. Yeah, so yeah, let's dive into some stuff that we're looking forward to next year. We can kind of like keep this part loose a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, what are you excited about that's coming out next year?
Let's just get this off the table. Dune Part 2.
We're both really excited for Dune Part 2. We've mentioned it multiple times.
Dune Part 2 or bust.
Yeah. We're stoked.
Yeah, stoked. Fucking that is my most anticipated film of next year.
Same, it's at the top of my list.
Robert Eggers, my favorite director of the past decade.
Nice.
Robert Eggers.
Yeah.
Coming back with a Nosferatu remake.
Oh yeah, baby. We got Willem Dafoe in there. We got fucking Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok. His weird little face and some makeup again.
Willem Dafoe should work with Robert Eggers for the rest of their lives.
He's so good.
He is to Robert Eggers what De Niro is to Scorsese.
Yeah, I was gonna say Eggers is so good at giving Dafoe the conditions to shine as brightly as Dafoe possibly can. He's really good at being like, here's the perfect script, here's the perfect camera setup, here's the perfect, set of circumstances, here's the perfect costume, and then like just it tees up Dafoe to perfectly just execute whatever he's going for.
I do wonder if we need another Nosferatu classic take on Dracula.
It is a little silly that Nosferatu was initially created as a way to get around the rights to Dracula. They were basically like, we can't get the rights to Dracula, but we want to make a Dracula movie.
Right.
So Nosferatu is essentially royalty-free Dracula. And then it's like weird to then remake a knockoff of Dracula when there have been like, now Dracula's public domain. And there have been like 15,000 Dracula movies. Like, anyway,
but like if anyone's gonna do it, it's Eggers.
He
right?
should do it. Yeah. I'm also excited for Nosferatu. It's on my list as well. Another one that is on my list that I don't think requires an explanation from me is Horror in the High Desert Part 3. I've already talked about that. That's coming out next year. Stoked for that. How are we feeling about Furiosa, David?
I am maybe cautiously optimistic,
Same.
which is not something I expected to say. I expected to be fully in on Furiosa.
Yeah.
But the trailer, we'll see.
Yeah.
And George Miller, it's I thought 3,000 Years of Longing, which is his most recent film, was okay. This doesn't quite look like it has the same qualities that made Fury Road so strong.
Right.
But Anya Taylor-Joy, great casting choice as Furiosa. I think Chris Hemsworth should be weird and freaky in more things.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, same. It's definitely on my list. I'm also like cautiously optimistic for it. I'll go see it.
I'm also cautiously optimistic for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't think I've mentioned this on the podcast yet, but the recent Planet of the Apes trilogy with Rise, Dawn, and War it's one of my favorite trilogies probably ever, and some of the best science fiction that we've had recently. And Matt Reeves has moved on from that series after doing Dawn and War to doing the Batman movies, which that's great. Can't wait for what he does with Batman Part 2. I don't think that's coming out next year, though. And they handed off this new Planet of the Apes movie to the guy who did the Maze Runner movies. So we'll see. The trailer's pretty solid, though. I've seen it 3 times this week going to the movies, and I'm like, you know what? I hope that's good.
Which, by the way, I can't speak to Maze Runner because I haven't read any of those books or seen any of those movies. I heard at least the first one of those is kind of good.
Okay, I did not hear that.
Yeah, I heard, maybe it's not the first one. Maybe people said the second one was good. I don't remember. I remember hearing one of those was kind of good. And I was like, really? But yeah, you never know. Maybe working with the right property, he'll be able to do something with it. And Planet of the Apes, I feel like, isn't easy enough. Not easy enough, but like not a difficult property to approach as a director. I feel like you kind of know what you're getting into as the director of a Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, and also with a lot of high-profile, big-budget failures this year,
Yeah.
I'm wondering how the people are going to be feeling with the new Apes movie. I wonder if the people yearn for the apes.
The children yearn for the apes
because it's been a few years since the last one. So
yeah. Anything else? Because I have one more on my list.
Yeah, go ahead and hit me with it.
All right. So I know we're both looking forward to this one, but you probably even more than I am. You know what else is coming out next year, David?
Is it Terrifier 3?
It's Terrifier 3.
Yay!
Art the Clown's coming back.
Yay! Art's coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a Christmas movie.
It's gonna be a Christmas movie.
That'll be fun.
I can't wait. I hope Damien Leone, love you. If you're listening, don't make it 2.5 hours again.
Yes, please shorter. I liked when the first one was 90 minutes. That was nice. I like 2 better than 1, but if 2 had been the runtime of 1, it would have easily gotten another star out of me. Yeah, but it's gonna be fun to see Art the Clown as a Christmas slasher, doing all kinds of fucked up shit with presents and stockings and trees and whatever else we can get his hands on.
Presumably murdering children.
Yeah,
which
I hope so.
I can't wait for. I gotta admit, someone on Twitter was like, "If you're excited for Terrifier 3, you're a fucking awful evil person." And if that's the case, then guilty as charged.
Yep, we're awful evil people, baby. Because Art the Clown ripping apart kids sounds fun. Sounds like something I want to see. Because it's fake. And I don't condone actual violence against children, as has been previously stated on this podcast.
I do have one more that I am, again, cautiously optimistic for.
Yeah.
That's Alien Romulus, which is an Alien spinoff directed by Fede Alvarez, who did Evil Dead 2013.
Yeah. Okay.
It's, a lot of the Alien movies past Aliens are I can take or leave, and I think Ridley Scott's return to the series has not been particularly successful for me. So I'm interested to see someone else turn their hand at the series. And Fede Alvarez, Evil Dead 2013 is great. I thought Don't Breathe was really good too.
Yeah, I think if you give if Evil Dead 2013 is any indication, if you give Fede Alvarez an existing horror property, you're probably going to be doing just fine.
Yeah.
This will really be the test of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved what he did with Evil Dead. I think we'll probably cover Evil Dead 2013 on this show, and I'm drawing a line in the sand right now and saying we may do that this year.
And I'm going to draw a similar line in the sand
Yeah.
and say we're probably going to talk about an Alien movie this year.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So yeah, that's it. I don't think there's anything else that we're really aware of that we're super anticipating.
No. That's pretty much it. Obviously stuff gets announced, stuff gets pushed, so this is kind of just our general feelings at the very, very beginning of this year. But yeah.
That's our best of 2023. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, and thank you for supporting the podcast in 2023. Hopefully you continue to support, continue to listen, continue spreading the word, leaving reviews, leaving likes and rating the show wherever you listen to it and all that stuff, because we really appreciated all the support we got, both from people that we know and even like a few people that we don't who are listeners to the show in 2023. And we want to keep doing this and want you to keep enjoying it. So
yeah, we'll keep doing it as long as you guys keep enjoying it. And
Yeah.
please spread the word about the show. We have so many fun ideas planned, and we're just having the time of our lives doing this. So thank you guys for supporting it. Justice, I have a little late Christmas present for you
Oh.
in the form of next week's episode.
Oh. Okay. All right.
We're getting back into movies, and I got a weird little movie
Yeah.
that I have gift wrapped specifically for you and specifically for our listeners. Oh my God, I'm so excited. It is the first Ugandan action film directed by the Ugandan Quentin Tarantino himself, Isaac Nabwana Godfrey Jeffrey. It's Who Killed Captain Alex.
Yes, I have only ever heard of this movie from you.
This movie, for those listening who aren't aware of this movie was made in Uganda for $200. It is available all over the world for free. You can stream it on the official Hollywood YouTube channel. It is 70 minutes long.
I love that.
Please give it a watch before next week's episode. It is a film unlike anything that we have talked about. And I can't wait to talk about it.
I am very, very excited to see this movie because, like I said, I have never heard about this except from you, and everything that you say about it is like you just get this gleam in your eye when you talk about this movie. It's similar to how I feel like I've seen you talk about like The Room. So yeah, just I'm stoked. This is gonna be a fun one.
Yeah. So we hope you'll join us for that. We hope you guys have had a happy new year and continue to support us throughout the rest of the year and hopefully many years to come. Until then, later dipshits.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Greatest Movie Ever Made. Please remember to leave us a rating and a review and to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. We appreciate you supporting the show and spreading the word. Tell your friends to listen, tell your enemies to listen, tell your mom to listen. If your neighbor has an unsecured Bluetooth speaker, connect to it and play an episode. You can follow us on social media at TGMEM_podcast. And if you've got a movie that you want us to talk about, send us an email at thegreatestmoviepodcast@gmail.com.
I love my popcorn. Movies, popcorn.